And here we are again, folks. Good to see you. We are live again. And tonight we're going to talk all about how did the world get into such a mess? Why are we in such a particular mess at this particular time? You know, what is it? All around the world, we're seeing so many problems. We're seeing problems in society. Let's see if we can let's see if we can address some of those issues to find out what's going on in the world. But first of all, we're going to say hello to a few people, and we'll say a few hellos, and then have a think about the sort of questions you'd like to ask me and Jane. What do you think is the root cause, perhaps spiritually in particular, of why we're getting in such a mess in the world at the moment? So maybe we get a few hellos. Yes, Jane?
Cookies and Dream. Hi to you both from lovely Devon. Just to let you know, you have lots of fans from Mauritius watching you too. I have passed on the link. Ali.
Oh, that's nice. We got little groups of people all over the world, you know. I went into the Chinese restaurant last night and she's, Mr. Hamilton Parker, you have so many friends in China. Goody.
Especially from the button factory.
Didn't give me a discount though.
Of course not.
Yeah.
Ava, hi Jane and Craig.
Hi Ava, nice to see you. Facebook friends here I see coming in too, because you can connect with us both on Facebook and on YouTube.
Hello from Birmingham.
Hi Erin. Good to see a few new names coming up as well, because you get a lot of regulars come in as well. Hi both, do you? Come. Hi from Paul Dorset, great show today, Jane.
Thank you, thank you, Frank.
Because Jane's got her own channel. If you have a look in the description below, you can also get a few other ones from Jane. She launched another one early on today.
Next talk I'm going to do, Craig, is world predictions.
Oh, good. Yeah, I'm working on mine actually. People keep asking for me, but I might wait till after the American primaries just to see what's happened and see what else has come true of the things I've said before I launch them.
That's good.
But I'm going to be loads and loads of videos on lots and lots of things, so don't forget to follow us.
CS, hello from where, Craig?
From Asia.
Wow.
That's a pretty big area. Could be anywhere. Like hello from Europe or hello from the Americas. I'll have a think about the theme today, guys. If you're just joining us, we always have a few minutes of hellos just to let you get online and have a think about the questions you want to ask. And remember, always put them in the comments as well if you come to the show late. But we're thinking about, why is the world in such a state? What are the factors that we think are at the root cause spiritually of this malaise that affects the world? You can read it, Jane?
No, you can.
I'll go quiet deliberately so that you could... Okay.
That's the first.
Hi, Craig and Jane. I do hope you are well, and thanks for always being a breath of fresh air. You've not followed me into the loos before. Do you see things resolving with regards to cost of living crisis and energy costs? I really hope so. Yeah, we'll address that. We'll address that type of thing as well, and some of the sort of questions that are going to be topical at the moment. But I want to get particularly behind the idea of what's going on in the world. Perhaps we should start now with some of those thoughts.
Let's have one more. And then
more, just a couple more hellos then from people. Then you can do the next one, Jane.
Can I?
Yeah.
Nana, hi everyone. Hi Nana. And Paul, hello Craig and Jane from Essex. An Essex boy.
Okay, let's have a think about some of the... It's a pretty problematic world at the moment out there when you think about it. I mean, I think it's one of the worst sort of... world situations in my lifetime. I remember, like at the times of the Vietnam War and things, which dates me, I mean, the world was in chaos. And I remember all the marches to Aldermaston and things like that when everybody was worried about the nuclear bombs.
Actually, Craig, I was on that march.
Yeah, I know you were. Yeah. And of course then there was the Cuban Missile Crisis, I suppose, was just in my lifetime when I was really young. Just dating ourselves now a little bit here. There's a new video about to be launched about how to live longer. I'm putting up on Monday actually. But so that's on my mind. These two seem to be particularly troublesome times. They seem to be particularly dark times, and there's so many factors. And I want to think about what are the factors that are making things so bad, and do we always come this way? You know, how many utopian type of views have there been in the history of civilization, where somebody's come up with a great idea that we can create a utopia. You know, that came from the ancient Greeks, didn't it? Plato and everybody talked about utopias, perfect societies. And many people have had many stabs at doing it too, of course, haven't they? They've tried to create, the 1960s. They thought after the Second World War, we're going to have a utopian world. We're going to strip out the centres of these old Victorian towns, for example, and we're going to put in beautiful new concrete buildings, And now that utopia has become a dystopia because it's actually horrible. We got all concrete blocks and places where you can't live, and we got crumbling new buildings where we could have had crumbling old buildings, certainly here in the UK. And brutalism came around. So the society has so many hopes, and yet it all seems to tumble. And it makes me think, and here's a question for you, Jane. Do you think that human beings are fundamentally good people or fundamentally bad people? I mean, is there, like in Christianity, the idea of maybe an original sin, that we're actually bad at heart rather than good at heart?
Well, when a baby gets christened, the priest turns around and tries to forgive that baby with sin. How can an innocent child be born with sin? So I don't agree with that, what the church says.
Well, this is one of the fundamental teachings of Christianity, is that, we fell. We fell at the time of Adam, and even in the resurrection we are cleared of the sins that were. And this is kind of been one of the concepts behind Western thinking, philosophy for a long time, that basically, people might start off all nice and innocent, but something corrupts them, or they're already corrupted. The seeds of corruption are within them. And I often think that, you think about what, I think it was Lincoln that said, one of the things that goes wrong very often with people, it can be very good people, and we always think of people as being, these are evil people, sort of, we talk about, but fundamentally good people often become fundamentally bad people. Like Lincoln said, give a man power, and it will corrupt him. If you want to measure a person, give them power. And what happens when you give them power? Absolute power corrupts. And
well, all I could say, Craig, let's bring a few women in with power and see how far that goes.
Well, then even the women can become very corrupted if you look at it. I mean, there's many I could mention. Not so many women have been in power, but if you look at
Troy.
Helena Troy caused the Trojan Wars.
Well, she was in power, Craig.
But this is another thing. You see, we often say, these evil people in the world, and I have to ask myself, who are these evil people, and were they evil from birth? When I look at you talked about innocence and children. How can a child be evil or wrong? When I think about when we were children, and all the people at school and that, yeah, there were some bad kids, yeah, but nobody was fundamentally bad, And sometimes I look at people, look at Putin. I think, what was he like as a little boy? When he was 4 years old, coming up to 6 years old, when we were just beginning to become self-aware. I mean, were they evil from the beginning, these people? Or does something happen in your life? Does something happen to corrupt you? Something breaks you, something ruins you and turns you from good to bad.
Children and people are dissatisfied with things, so they're going through life, I'm going to make it better for me, not necessarily for other people. Think about it. Because children, they always want to fantasize, they want to be something, like you're saying about Putin. He was in the Secret Service, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And so, a lot of it might be envy. I could do a better job in that. And they suddenly take over, like Hitler. Yeah. He was quite a powerful speaker, Hitler, and he was quite talented with paintings. But I wouldn't go along with his philosophy or everything he done.
But at a point, I wonder what he was like. Well, we can really discern this, but what was he like when he was the artist? When he was the artist wanting to do the drawings of the buildings, and he had dreams about going to college, and then the art teacher said he's a rubbish. I think it was a Jewish art teacher that said he was rubbish.
Yes, it was.
And caused him to hate the Jewish people. So there's like triggers, and often I think that the seeds of corruption seem to come on such tiny little things in people's minds, you know. People I know personally who started off as quite good people and in their lives have become sometimes quite unpleasant people. When you get to the root of what causes them to be like they are, they're tiny little seeds, they're silly little things, childish things that seem to grow into some adult nastiness.
Well, it's all
How can I express it?
It's all about power, isn't it? It's about power. It's all about wanting to better themselves. It's what's happening to the world at the moment. It's like you get a power that's coming from China, you're getting a power that's trying to come from Russia to take over the world. It's all about power, isn't it?
Yeah, there's so many levels, isn't it, on it, really? When we think about the world itself, yeah, we've got democracies in the world, but then we've also got these hugely almost totalitarian organisations with China and Russia. How can we deal with those type of things? And I think I personally think the worst things happening are in the world around us. I think the family, for example, has become completely undermined by the sort of values that are coming in the world, you know, at the moment. I don't like this idea of the feminisation of young boys. You know, you're not allowed to play football. You're not allowed to climb trees. Anybody that's Anglo-Saxon's got to feel guilty about being an Anglo-Saxon or coming from Anglo-Saxon heritage. There's so much messing around with what I think are very simple ideas, self-evident things, all in the name of trying to make the world a more PC world, and I think that's dangerous personally, because I think it creates more divisions than it does.
Sissy world, I'd call it.
Yeah, it creates more divisions than it does unities, and I think this is where divisions are coming, because it's always us and them, isn't it? You're creating that they're creating that by trying to.
Well, it's a beautiful world, but it's the people in it. I mean, we've got all these stabbings from the youth now. And we've got all these people, not all of them, but immigrants coming over, and we've got all a high crime rate.
I think we are getting a clash of cultures.
Yes, we are, definitely.
Because, I mean, a lot of people coming into the countries and into Europe have come from war-torn countries where there's a higher incidence of knife crimes, for example, and that has become a major problem in the world. I mean, we'd never heard of knife crimes much. Yeah, I mean, I suppose there's the Cray twins and all that lot, really. But there does seem to be an epidemic of violence.
They weren't with knives, they were guns.
Yeah.
The Cray twins.
Yeah, but there's an epidemic of violence in the world that seems to...
it's anger, isn't it?
But it goes right down to the kids.
Yeah, but
that's
it's
what worries
like
me.
An energy of anger, isn't it? It's sort of anger. It's like, I've got to have, and I must have it at any cost.
Yeah, there seems
Even
to be...
with politicians...
There seems to be, it's like everything is about division, isn't it? And I think the more that you try to brush over it and try to say we're all one and everything, the wokeism, for example, it has become something that has watered down the arguments. And I think we need to be much more realistic, I think, about the problems in society. There are many serious divisions in society. We can't whitewash out with our advertising. We can't whitewash it out with doing sort of very PC sort of programs everywhere. I think this PC business, personally, is destructive. And I know that's a bit extreme, but it's destructive because it's trying to do good, and I understand what it's trying to do, and I'm completely 100% behind the idea of everybody's the same and unity and multiculturals are good and everybody's a good person in the world. There's only one nation in the world. Yes, but the more you try to manipulate it, the more you try to use politics, the more advertisers jump on because it's cool to do, it actually creates secret divisions in society, I think. I think it causes racial divisions, social divisions. I think it causes divisions between left and right in politics, or red and blue in politics, and all the rest of it. All these things are constantly where people are trying to manipulate us all the time. And the algorithms as well, I think, are one of the things that are really bringing the world down on its knees. Because if you watch something extreme on YouTube, you watch an extreme political thing or an extreme racist thing or something like that, what will happen is you'll get fed more and more of those videos, you know, and you go on Google and you get fed more and more of those things. You go on any of the platforms of social media and they say, oh, you liked that, give them another one, you know, and you start thinking that the whole world thinks the same as you do if you've got some twisted, mixed up idea. You think everybody in the world agrees with the idea that we should all starve ourselves to death and have bulimia. You know, you start watching more and more videos about it, and although they try to police it, you can't police the algorithm, because it's a machine, and if you start policing the algorithm, you start censoring political freedoms and personal freedoms. So in my opinion, the algorithms, you know, the very algorithms that make you see this video, for example, because you've watched other spiritual videos and you might watch other people with similar themes that we talk about, means this one pops up and we all start thinking in these little blinkered ways. Do you think, Jane, or other things that you think are at the heart of a problem?
To change the world, I'd sack all the politicians that's in Parliament now and get politicians that's really for the real people. I wouldn't get these Eton boys or Harrow boys taking over. I'd get people that have got more understanding of the ordinary person. I mean, I don't like it the way the pensioners are treated in this country. I think we got the poorest pensions in this country. I believe Italy get much more. I would start again and wipe a clean slate. We need more police force to wipe out crime. We need more nurses, and I'm talking about qualified nurses, because we used to be very much, qualifications nurses, English were the finest in the world. I wouldn't have nurses coming abroad that weren't qualified. I mean, how can you put a patient in hospital and the nurse can't speak English or that? I'd change everything.
I think one of the things in this country and in most countries is we need to sort of start, instead of just always sourcing cheap labour, train people ourselves. Because I don't think it's fair when you take a doctor from Nigeria and put them in the National Health Service or put them in the American Health Service or whatever. They might be great at what they do and great that they want to get on in life, but what about the poor people back in Nigeria that now don't have a doctor? You know, and so what about all the nurses that we've taken from Indonesia and Thailand and places like that, where they don't have their own people? I mean, they'll try to train up more, but they're going to constantly have trainees. It doesn't strike me as fair that we seem to think that in the West we have a right to import all the best people from around the world and let the rest of the countries of the world flounder with health services that can't manage. So I think that's another thing. I think the thing is, it's all about greed. Every democracy has been built on slavery, and that's what we're doing again.
Yeah. I mean, for another start, I would have free public transport, buses, and I'd have it all running perfectly well, like they got in Disney. It feels like we're living in a Disney world, doesn't it, at the moment?
Yeah.
You think about it. But
so basically you're describing socialism there, really?
Well, not really. Not really. I want a fair world where people get treated fairly, and not that you get these politicians that come in, they make you promises, and directly they're in, it all changes.
See, the whole society we're in at the moment really is based on selfishness.
And
it's based on having more, and it's based on always having those things outside of ourselves that we say, but we all know in our heart mean nothing ultimately, because there's no pockets in a shroud. We can't take any of it with us, and yet the whole society is geared up for all these external things that are so important, and we're ripping all the resources out of the world in order to have it all. And really, I think the only answer, personally, and I don't know, we're going to take some questions from you guys in a moment, but what do you think? The only way I think we can handle all this is if there's a return to spirituality. I mean, and what I mean by that is not being so focused on the worldly things, but more focused upon the inner self, the inner world,
inner view,
and learning to live contentedly as a focused inner person. You're focused within the inside. You don't need the things on the outside. Now, that all sounds very sort of with the fairies, I expect people might say that's a bit away with the craziness. But it's not, because if each of us can learn to require less and be content and happy not to require less, then we start to get into a utopian world. I don't think we can ever have a system where things can be perfect. Like I said before, they've tried from the ancient Greeks, and there have been many, many societies where they've tried to create the perfect society, but there's always a flaw, something always falls down. But the things that have succeeded the best have usually had a spiritual heart to them. A spiritual
shall
heart.
we answer some questions?
Yeah, anyway,
Craig?
we've yabbered on
Otherwise
too
you'll
much.
be here till tomorrow morning.
And there's been an awful lot of extremist things we've said amongst that too. So what do you guys think? Let's have some thoughts on the type of theme that we've been talking to. How can we sort the world out?
Misinformation. Do you think that a reason why things are going crazy right now is the lack of meaning in life and the lack of spiritual connection? It seems less and less people looking for meaning. That's quite perfectly true, isn't it?
Exactly. That's what I was saying earlier. I mean, it's because we have become selfish and materialistic that we've completely lost the plot with the
Greed,
world.
isn't it?
And there's a sense of meaningless. I mean, we've met people as well, and it's an old cliche, I suppose, but you meet people who've got the whole world, but then in themselves they feel lonely people. They can be hugely famous people, and they feel deeply alone and meaningless. And they think, is this it? I've achieved all this. I've got all I should have. I've got all the money. I've got everything. And yet there's still an emptiness there. Why is this a lack of meaning? That's because we're looking in the wrong direction for our happiness. We're looking for happiness in the things of the world, when really we should be looking for happiness within ourselves.
Happiness has got to come within, hasn't it?
Exactly.
Shall we see what the next question is? MR, the problem is greed and selfishness created by a lot of trauma within the people.
It is.
Yeah.
I mean, you think about all of it. I mean, it seems like in any field, you always get one takes the lot. I mean, like I've written books, you'll always find that one or two people take the lot. You think about in the music industry, one or two bands will take the lot, and all the rest of them will starve. Go without. And everything, in the arts, in finance, certainly, in politics, is always a focus that one always takes it all. There's never a spreading of good fortune.
Yeah.
Nobody shares.
Yeah,
basically.
money should be really for sharing and helping others less fortunate, because you cannot take the money with you. Money's here just paying bills or paying ground rent when we're on the earth at the moment. So, when we had that COVID-19, people were much more generous, weren't they? Giving. The moment it stopped, you saw all the world being selfish again.
Yeah, and there's a big flaw in accumulating wealth all the time, because all it does is it's draw enemies to you. Actually, it draws people that want to rob that wealth and take that wealth from you. So the best way to handle wealth is to give to others.
Give it away.
Not give all of it away, because then you'd be poor too, but you need to distribute. You need to give part of what you've got to others. And share, basically, just share. Because why should one or two people want to keep it all? And I always find it in groups of people. You'll often find, you get a group of people where they're all nice people, but there's always one. There's always one that feels that they've got to have more than everybody else. Or even if it means they've got to have more attention than everybody else, for example, like now. Or if they feel that they're special, that others should go without. You get one difficult, selfish person, and it creates problems in the small scale. You get it on a big scale, you get a few world leaders that must, what are these Chinese leaders? What sort of money do they have stuffed away, and what sort of homes have they got in their secret places they live? Vast, vast amounts, all kept selfishly. And that's where we're going wrong, I think. Where we sorted it all out.
You put the world right now, Craig.
On the way.
Right, do you want to read that?
The personality takes hold of the person. Is it that consciousness is clouded enough through the personality, and the personality itself has bad characteristics? Well, quite an interesting thought there. You've taken the concept there that the personality is a bad thing, that the ego is a bad thing. We couldn't function without an ego. We couldn't function without a personality. So these things are natural, that we have to have. So we can't blame the mechanism. It's how we use it. Our consciousness is what directs the personality, is behind the personality. Our consciousness is behind the ego. And all these things are tools that we interact, whatever the self is, interacts with the world. So we can't say we're innately bad because we're separate from the divine, as it were, you know. We are the multitude that's manifested from the oneness. So that's what you're thinking about, divinely, Diana. That's what I would say to that. It's to come to this idea of, are we innately good or bad people? And I think humanity and all life is innately good. All life is innately good. But our contact with the world means we have to go through the survival process. And the survival process means selfishness, because I have to survive and that person doesn't. So that's the battle. But I think as we evolve consciously, we move from that state of kind of innocence that the animalistic world has into a conscious state, and then our duty then is to become more altruistic. We, instead of taking from the world, we've got to become the gardeners of the world. We've got to look after it.
All right, what's the next one? Claire Hillier. Question for Jane. What are your thoughts about Lucy the case, the nurse accused of killings? I think that's absolutely shocking. Our nurse can do that to babies. And Craig and I was talking today. Imagine a mother going all through that birth, having a baby, and you get someone that's wanting to kill that child for what reason whatsoever. Even if she had mental problems, she shouldn't be doing that to little ones. The grief, the suffering, I just feel that she should be imprisoned for life. Don't you?
I think with that, also the thing that I thought was so horrible about it, one of the children, she went back 4 times because the child didn't die. There's that little baby fighting for life and survived, and then pushed to the edge again, and again, and 4 times she attempted to kill that child. That is what we would call evil and wicked. But is that woman who's doing that? She looked as sweet, as beautiful face, looked the perfect nurse, someone you want to hand your baby to.
You can never take a book by its cover.
You can't. You certainly can't. But you know, this is the question again. One of the questions that comes from this: why are we in such a mess, really? Because are people innately evil, or has something happened in that woman's life to make her that way? When she was a little girl, what was it that triggered it all? So I think all of us, even the most horrible of people like that woman, have some saving grace behind it. And I think when we go back to the spirit world, we're shown that. We get to see the wrongs we've done.
It's all about, with that person, control, with life and death. It's all about control. And then a lot of it attention seeking, that the nurse is there and pretending to resuscitate, and those doctors on the ward think, 7 babies, and when this nurse is on duty and this all happens, because there was another nurse that done the same thing a few years ago, if I remember rightly.
There's been lots of cases.
At the end of the day, nobody gets the right to take a child's life, whatever the circumstances are. So that woman should be in prison the rest of her life. It's never going to bring those babies or children back, and that is sheer wickedness as far as I'm concerned. No excuse, Craig, for that nurse's childhood whatsoever.
No, but I say everybody, even though who's horrible people, have to eventually find redemption. Everybody does eventually. But she even recognized the evil that she was doing. She called herself evil, so she was obviously a very, very mixed up person. No. But like you say, absolutely no excuses. People will often make excuses to say, I've got a mental problem, a personality disorder or something that makes me do these terrible things. We still have free will. Even all of us have free will. And I don't think madness is an excuse most of the time, because everybody has free will on all levels. So that's a bit harsh, but that's what I think.
Right. Kitty Whiskers, meow. I don't believe people are born evil. However, they learn badness through life. That's very true. If every person done good deeds rather than bad, the world would be a much better place. Imagine, that's absolutely true. Nobody is born with a bad gene. Are people born with a good gene? And I think, people do these wicked things, whatever gets into their head, and some people think they get away with it, but every action is accountable on earth. People think they get away with it, murderers do. Eventually they get caught. For instance, that girl that went missing, I think she was 19 years old, they've recovered bones and personal possessions in a paedophile's house, I believe, and that took 2 years, and somebody came forward. Somebody knows something when there's murders and things done. Somebody knows something, and then it might take years to come forward, but they get found out eventually. And I think people, evil doers, evil makers, Craig, and I think that's very true.
I think some people are born with evil tendencies. The reason I say that is, and some people are born with good tendencies, but they don't come out until later in life, because it's like...
And some people are born with terrible coughs.
Yeah, but people come into this world with the karma from previous lives. Now, if you accept the idea of previous lives, then we're going to carry with us tendencies from previous lives. And those tendencies might not show themselves when we're children. Like I was saying about when we look at us as innocents as children, we can see that everybody has in their heart the ultimate innocence and divinity that is there when they're little babies, for example. But then those tendencies bloom through life, good tendencies and bad tendencies. And with our interaction with life, we also learn badness through life and learn goodness through circumstances. But ultimately, you see, I think we all are ultimately, where we have free will. This is where things change. If we have free will, then we have to also take personal responsibility for our actions. If we take personal responsibility, we can become very powerful, empowered people. I'm responsible for everything that goes wrong in my life because of karma, because of actions I've done in one way or another. If I accept that everything I've done, good or bad, is my responsibility, then I can do something about it. But most people shun that idea. They try not to take responsibility. They try to make excuses. They blame other people. But if we take the reins of life, if we become the charioteer in our own life, if we let the divinity in ourselves become the charioteer of our life, then we take control. Then we take personal responsibility and we accept all good that comes into our life. We accept all bad that comes to our life equally, knowing that ultimately we are in control. And that's what I think part of the spirituality we need in the world is today. We need more people taking personal responsibility, of not just blaming everybody else and blaming society and blaming all the other things that go on in the world. At the end of the day, each of us has to do our part. Each of us has to be the spiritual change that's coming into the world. It's the only way it can ever work. And it's the only way we can change things. And it's the only bit we can do. But we can do that little bit. There we go.
God, you were long-winded, wasn't it?
It was. I do feel these things.
On the soapbox.
So, yeah.
Right. Mystic Rebel, do you think we need all this chaos for a spiritual awakening to come? I personally believe it is. I'm sure it's absolutely right, because you find all through centuries there's been all different plagues and all different things to try and bring people closer together. I mean, when we had that COVID and that people were much nicer, weren't they? Leaving eggs on the doorstep, flour for baking, and people are enjoying life much better, getting closer to nature, going for walks, and it's like the whole world stopped and shut down. And directly that went all out the way, then people started coming horrible again, didn't they, Craig?
Yeah, and I think you've got a good point there too, because if you think about through history, most of the spiritual awakenings that have come at times that have been major difficult turning points for that particular nation where that spiritual thing has happened. You know, I mean, all the great spiritual leaders have usually arisen when things have become very, very dark. And then people are more prone to want to awaken, or want to see further than the problems of the world. We need a bit of stick and we need a bit of carrot in everything in life. So I think in many respects the chaos that is in the world, the troubles that are in the world are perhaps, could be seen as a blessing in disguise. Perhaps they're going to be something that will allow us to start questioning the shallowness of the drives that we all have for material, more and more material things, and fame and power, and you know, all the negative things that we flood the world with. So I think you're right, Mystic Rebel. You're right being a rebel too. You know, we need to be like that. You know.
Sounds like a dentist outside. They're doing
They
the
can't hear
road.
what's outside, you don't need to comment on it. Right.
Right, Maria, how can we be sure that all people are people? We live in a big universe. We can come from different places. Some places can be very bad. We don't know that part of ministry.
You're pushing it over to me. Okay.
Well, you seem to have a lot to say.
I'm saying that's why I'm going quiet to let you.
No, you
answer
don't
some.
go quiet very long.
All right then. So I was just relaxing there, thinking I'll let Jane do that one. How can we be sure that all people are people? Well, we can't be sure anybody. I can't be sure anybody out there is real other than me. It's true, isn't it? I mean, we can't. But it could be a complete matrix, and I'm sat in some computer somewhere on some mad scientist's laboratory, having everything plugged in, and it's an alternative reality. It's a counterfeit reality.
Yeah, reality
we can't
state.
answer that question, can we? But the problem that I feel with those type of questions, Maria, is that very often people get carried away with the fantasy that can be degenerated from that. And I think this is another problem that we have, that people are not particularly realistic. I mean, there's just recently I read in the news, I don't know what the name of the channel was, but there was that guy that had been being done in the courts because he was making up so many conspiracy theories about body doubles, for example, and saying that the Queen's a body double. You know, we've had people commenting on the channel here saying, it's not, the Queen didn't really die. You know, it was all faked up. You know, and then you start seeing, well, when these murders happen and things like that, and you say it's all faked up. Just a minute, this guy's going to get done, and I'm glad they are getting done because they're making not millions, billions they've made out of those things. Of course, you can say, that's all fake too, but this fantasy thing of saying everything's fake, that people aren't even real, that Putin's not real, the Queen's not real. I think I could accept it with Biden, actually. I think he probably is someone being propped up. But, joking aside, I think that, frankly, we're in danger very often. It's a bit like I was saying about the algorithms. A fantasy can go out there, and we can add more and more and more on it, and you end up with getting more and more sort of likes and more sort of algorithm throwing you more crazy stuff, and you end up not knowing whether the world's real or not, and even if the people in the world are real. So common sense, I think you've got to have a bit more common sense in the world. That's partly what's going wrong. Self-evident things. Nobody's prepared to even sort of say the emperor's got no clothes. We've got to be realistic as if we want to be spiritual as well. Fantasy's no good. Reality's better. There. I've had my soapbox again. Your turn, Jane. You say something.
Thank you, Craig.
Tell them about the woke madness.
Sally Ann, hi, Craig and Jane. What do you think about this woke madness? Well, it's gone a bit extreme, hasn't it?
Don't pass it to me. It's your turn. Well, I got a nice hot potato for you there.
Right. Well, I'm not at all racist. I think there's good people that have come in this country and like doctors and done good things like artists and that. But I don't like where it's all taken control of our history in England. You cannot wipe history out. You look on the television and we don't see, years ago, like the BBC, Craig, it used to be very posh speaking newscasters now, and it's all changed. It's all people from different ethnic countries, isn't it? And people that are talking, and Craig gets quite cross when he sees all these drama plays, for example.
I don't like people, let me clarify that, I don't like people messing with history.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's such a lot of good history for all nations, and I don't like people suddenly messing with history and saying that we've got to change it all.
Jane Austen.
Yeah, and I don't think that's fair. I don't think that's good. That's people trying to manipulate the world. I mean, yes, there's been bad things in the past, and I mean, and I also even think, good things have been done by, Britain and all the countries of the world. Every country's had its light side and its dark side. Every single country of the world that's ever risen to prominence. And we should celebrate the good of each nation, and we should try to learn from the bad. But we shouldn't all go carrying, we shouldn't be saying all Germans are bad because of what happened to Nazi Germany, and now we end up with some of the best people in the world in Germany now because of what happened before. We shouldn't say, for example, all Japanese are bad because they went to war. We shouldn't say all Americans are bad because they bombed Japan. You know, every scenario that's ever happened in history you can say is good or bad. But we got to look to the good. We got to imitate the good. We got to try to, where we see good, we should imitate it. Where we see bad, we should try to learn from it and not do that way. And I think that has to happen with all things. And we can't just sort of try to make everything the way we want it to be, all sweet and dandy, by just trying to manipulate things with using the media and using everything else. Let's just be realistic. There's crazy stuff going on in the world at the moment, I think. And I think the kids, particularly at schools, are getting very, very confused because they learn. We used to learn at school by debate, for example. So things like, should we go in the common market was one of the big ones at the time. We got Brexit we've had now, but you know, the kids would have a real proper debate, and the teachers wouldn't try to change it and alter it. The good teachers wouldn't. They'd encourage us to debate. They'd encourage us to take different standpoints and show that there's two sides to an argument, guys, you know, and that's what you've learnt, you know, and those are the things we should be, but not trying to sort of manipulate the children's thinking nowadays into saying, you know, you're going to have a gender choice. What a lot of nonsense, you know. I mean, obviously you can tell what your gender is, and I identify with being this, or I identify with being that. No, the reality is you can't. It's not the way it is. You're physically this or that. Okay, tolerance, of course, to anybody that's got a different sexual way. That's fine. Nothing wrong with that if they want to do it. We certainly shouldn't sneer on people or look down on people like that. But I think we've got to be a bit careful when we start going down the path of, you know, with the kids. Let the kids be the kids. And I want to see the boys being more boys. I want to see the girls being more girls. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. The boys should be more chivalrous and look after the girls in a way. I know that's old-fashioned, but there's so many other things that are being destroyed in society because of this attitude. I think, for example, motherhood is being really destroyed because why shouldn't being a mum? I was a single parent I had brought my first daughter up before I met Jane. I brought my first daughter up from 6 months old, so I was a single mum, right? And I thought I was a single mum because I was bringing the baby up. That's what I mean. I was a single mum for a while, so I can talk. And I think motherhood is one of the hardest jobs in the world. I learnt that, and I think it's one of the ones we should have the most admiration for. And I think it's the most important job in the world because the mother brings into the world a new being who can become a good or bad person. You know, we talked about the seeds of evil. They're sown at the early stages. So you've got a good mum, you've got a good family, and you get good people. So why can't we say that we should only have one parent working? Let the mums be the mums and the dads go out and do the hard bit earning the money as well. And that way we get a more tolerance, we get a better society and better people because we need to help our kids develop into full human beings. Very, very important. And to teach values, not to say I'm going to let the values be taught by some guy at school who's come away with some pretty crackpot ideas and going to feed them into my kids. We need the kids at home. And that's why I think where there's a lot of problems with that, and I know a lot of people will tear me down and say, well, women should become lawyers and things. Of course they can. They're clever people, just the same as men. Of course they are. But motherhood is also a very skilled and a very, very important job. And if we throw that out, then I think we're creating problems in society. And I think that's one of the things where we're going wrong. I think a few people are going to hate me for this, but that's what I believe. Let's have another question and you answer it, please, Jane. Because I keep going on.
When you're talking like that, the young men now share. They're not 1950 housewives, women. The men all get involved with the upbringing of the children. They even get up to do the night feeds.
Yeah,
you've never done that.
The reason is because
they all help.
But the reason is because in order to have a home nowadays, you have to have two people working, which means two people have to do the domestics and two people have to do the working. And I think that's a little bit dodgy, really, because I think it was better to have a parent at home and one earning. But then that's very, very
Well, it's
old-fashioned.
very.
But
well,
I still think it works. It worked for centuries.
Yeah, but that's all very well saying that, Craig, because some people don't earn a lot of money.
I know, this is right. I mean, it's easy to talk about these things, but it's finding practical solutions is not easy.
This is up your street. Nura B, do you believe in the evil eye, how someone's jealousy and cause something bad to happen? There is lots of, I do believe in the evil eye, and I do believe that negative energy that people can cause through jealousies, through being insecure and envious, and that is evil in itself, the green-eyed monster. But some people might think putting curses on people and create negative energy in the ether on that person. So what you have to do is have non-attachment to those things and don't take it on board, and that's all very well, you might say, but somebody's looking at me and they're wishing me harm, and that, don't let them into your life. Simple as that. Come on.
Well, I think jealousy is an actual energy. I think negative thoughts are an actual energy.
Bad energy.
The jealousy is one of those powerful forces. I mean, in my life and in Jane's life too, we've often encountered very, very jealous people. Unfortunately, even within the spiritual world and within psychic world, there's an awful lot of jealous sort of people who do awful things sometimes. I think far from spiritual. And jealousy can be an actual force. And just as other more positive things can be a force for good, so jealousy can trip people up. And I think you can perhaps stop the evil eye. Again, I think the best way to do it is by looking to your own nature. I think if you're, like I was saying, if you are centered in yourself, if you are spiritually focused, these things have much harder for them to trouble you. Which incidentally, by the way, those of you that follow us on Facebook, we've been getting a number of people sort of offering spells and things in our name. Please ignore those people, and please report them if you've watched us on Facebook. Report them so that those profiles get taken down.
They're offering candles,
but I believe there is an evil eye and there is an evil energy. But these spellcasters and things are certainly not the ones to go and see to get it sorted out. You'll end up in worse trouble than you started.
Carolyn, thanks for this absolutely needed video, which is the world is in such a mess, and even better, the second part of the title. Can we change it? We can change it with all good thoughts and all good actions and all good deeds, and be more loving in society and more caring in society.
Yeah,
do you think?
And I think sometimes when you look at the world around us, you can kind of feel a bit hopeless with it. We think, oh, it's all so out of control. What can I do? But they say many drops make an ocean. It's like there's 110,000 people following us here on YouTube. If every single one of you gave us £1 today, we would have a spiritual centre tomorrow. You see? But it don't work like that. Normally a few people do a lot of good, but I would suggest that everybody tries to do their little bit. Everybody does their little bit. And even if it's small or even if it's large, sometimes we can do actions in the world that can make massive differences. Like when we do readings, for example, sometimes we might do something for one person that completely changes their life. Other times it might not be quite as effective as that, but we just keep doing what we can do and do our best. We do what each of us know we can do. And some people, it might be doing spiritual work. Other people, it might be doing practical work for people. Or it might just even be having good thoughts about others too, because even that has a power in the world. But little things mount up. And so there's much we can do. And even though we feel often hopeless with it, often the great spiritual movements have come not just because there's been a big spiritual leader in the world of some sort who has inspired, but he had to open the hearts of people, and it was the people that he inspired that did the mass. It was the people that inspired that build the temples, that build that build the churches, that build all the things of the world. That comes from these individuals of whatever religion people have followed, for example, when a great light has come into the world of one sort or another. So it's what we do individually. It's our little bits that I think make the world change. We don't have to do a lot. Jane's turn.
Jane's just going to have a gulp of water.
No, Jane's turn.
Right, Nana. How can you really be sure if a person is a good person? People can and do show good fronts. How can you tell if they're really... Well, I always go when a person stands in front of me, and in my solar plexus here, I get feelings, who's good, who's bad. It doesn't matter if they have top smart designer clothes. I get a feeling, what I can tell, and it never lets me down. And I feel trust is very important, very, very important. And go by your feelings, what you get here in front of people. That's how it works for me.
Well, gut feelings are important. Gut feelings will, but often I've been taken in by a lot of people in my life. So I couldn't say that I couldn't say that I spot a bad person all the time, even with my psychic abilities. I think, how did I not spot that person as a bad one? You know, because sometimes those gut feelings will work most of the time, but sometimes they don't. And I think I've often noticed with people that are generally good. Like my father was a very good man, I always felt, but he was taken in badly by a group of accountants that ripped him off when he was in business. And I thought, how did none of us spot that? You know, how did none of us know? And because the thing is, if you're a good person, you're usually pretty trusting to other people, and you don't imagine what that other person's thinking, because you think, oh well, everybody thinks nice thoughts, you know, like I wouldn't dream of going and robbing someone in the street, for example. But that's not in everybody's thoughts, is it? So you assume that everybody don't do those things because I think you've got the same moral standards that you have. So I suppose it's got to be a mixture of what Jane said, where we got to have a sort of element of intuitive knowledge and gut feeling about things, but also sheer practicality, and know that quite often what's ticking in someone's head is not always what they project into the world.
Women are much more advanced than men when you're talking about your gut feelings, because a woman would spot it immediately. If someone wasn't kosher, they'd spot, there's something about that person I don't like. They're all nice to me in sweetness and honey and light and charming, but there's something I don't feel right about a person, and it's always turned out 100% with me.
Yeah, I think so. But I think women are better at tricking the men as well, aren't they?
No, they're not.
Yeah, so we can't really be sure.
Women are natural nurturers, and men are meant to be providers. So we go back to the gatherers and hunting things again, Craig.
I think there's a difference between men's and women's attitudes in the world, definitely, and I think it's just as well there are, and because we do things in different ways, but without the two sides of the coin it wouldn't work. We have to have both. We have to have the hunters and the gatherers to make the world work.
Like Craig, for instance, you're the pen, I'm the ink. Frank, do you want me to read it, Craig? Is the problem we are having at the moment the start of the new age, as you said in your post in the past? You must have said that, did you?
I've said that quite a lot, and I think we are on the cusp of a better time. I think we're on the cusp of a new age. The darkness before the dawn, they say, don't they? And my gut feeling is that there's going to be, and I think it's going to be in my lifetime, I believe there's going to be a new awakening. And I think we have to the world has to be on its knees, really, before something really powerful can come into the world. And I don't see some, man on a horse in the sky coming through the clouds or anything like that. I don't think it's like that. And what will happen is, I think we live in such a world of communication that we know that sometimes, like an idea can take fire very quickly. Sometimes, mostly crazy ideas take fire very quickly through social media and things like that. And what if something really powerfully spiritual happened in the world and it went viral? I think, for example, I remember when all the Ganesha statues started drinking milk. Do you remember that?
They poured milk. They didn't drink.
They were drinking milk, and I spoke to a number of Hindu friends, and they said the Ganeshas started drinking milk, and there's many were first-hand experiences of that happening. I never saw it myself, but that was a spiritual thing for that particular group of people. But supposing something like that happened in the world. Supposing something miraculous started to take off, just like Uri Geller got everybody's watches started, or something like that. Do you remember? Could be the power of human consciousness is such that we could maybe all of a sudden shift everything, not just shift our own personal consciousness, but even give reality itself a bit of a kick, and we move into a different phase of reality, because I think reality is actually flexible. It's not something that's static. I believe it's something that actually changes with human consciousness. So yes, my answer, that long answer to that short question, is that I do feel there will be a moment, there will be a time, and I think it'll happen in a kind of like a viral way, and I get a feeling social media will be very much part of it. Hopefully this channel as well. And we're running out of time, Slow, so we're going to come to the last question soon. But let me just remind you all that Jane and I, all this what you're watching here in our studio here is all being funded by you guys. Thank you. By the patrons. And we'd love you all to become patrons. Like I said, if all of you could just give £1 or £1 a month, it would be fabulous. How far could we take this? So have a look in the description below, please, guys, and become a patron. It really does help us keep this going, and we want to take it to a new stage. We want to be able to start gathering more money to open a centre. We want to be able to start doing a lot of charitable work. We want to be getting a film crew together so we can have a whole crew to go out and do these things. And we want a centre where we can start to express this message in a bigger way. If you believe in what we're saying, then help us with what we're doing and become a patron of this channel in the description. There you go.
There you go, Craig.
So let's have the last question, say.
Right. Lisa. Hi, Craig and Jane. I'm Lisa, is it Cambodia? From New Zealand, married to an Indian from Hania, India. I totally agree with what you have spoken today. Spoken today as the greed taken over this world. It certainly has. It's like the whole world's got all this globalism, isn't it? I don't agree with it. There should be enough money in the pot to help those less fortunate, not, rich people get richer and richer and richer. It's awful, absolutely awful, isn't
and
it?
I think there's absolutely enough to go around. There's enough to go around so that everybody can be fed, everybody can be housed, everybody can have fresh water. I mean, it's madness, and everybody can have power. Energy. I mean, it's madness that a few want to have it all the time. We do need a better redistribution of the wealth of the world. And, here we are in the West, all of us in the West, everybody's usually watching these sort of channels, are usually sat in your comfy homes, when you're in your nice comfy chairs and things like that, when there's other people out there who haven't got anything, that's are really struggling just even to find fresh water.
I know when we went to India, I mean, these Indian people, are absolutely nothing, but they could have the most infectious, beautiful smile and good hearts and everything. And I think that really touched me.
Yeah, I mean, when I went right down into when I was in India, we were distributing some of the money and food we were giving out there on both of our behalves there. I was going into some of the really poor villages, and the simple, just giving a few oranges and things even. They treat you like a god. That was such a fantastic thing, and I think it's so good to do those things. And a small amount of money can do so much, And yeah, it is. It's a very, very sad thing, isn't it, that the greed has taken over the world like it has today. We mustn't let greed take over our individual selves. That's the important thing, though, isn't it?
And
each of us individually
don't you
must
also
be giving.
think, Craig, that Mother Nature's fighting back? They're chopping all these trees down. They wonder why we have floods around the world.
Well, there's not much Mother Nature to fight back, is there? I mean, the Amazon's being stripped down a massive amount, and I do hope I don't know what's going to happen in Brazil, but I do hope they get a change of government in Brazil so that they can start to restore the rainforests again, because they're commercializing it, and once that's gone, it'll just be savanna, and once it becomes savanna, it can never come back to jungle. We can't replant it. It won't work. Yes, so that's greed again.
You saying that, I can remember a lady saying all the orange peel, all the nuts and things like that, and they had bags and bags of it, and they chucked it on this barren land, and with a couple of years, it all started to grow back
Yeah,
to nature.
I mean, we can. There is hope. We can bring nature back, but the thing is, we're not, and we're thinking about fracking again and things like that because we went too fast into green energy. We need to be consistently, constantly, and urgently sorting the world out. So we got a material world to sort out, and we got a spiritual world to sort out. Really, I think the two things have to go hand in hand. And I think we do have to rethink, and I think that last message really is a good one to finish on, because it's greed. Greed's a bad thing. So, you know, you can give a bit to this channel, obviously, but if you don't want to give to me and Janie, you think we're about a bunch of idiots, go and give some money somewhere. Go now, after you finish watching this, go and do something charitable. I mean, that's little bits make a difference. And it's all right sitting in our armchairs saying, oh, the world's a terrible place. We have got to do something about it. And I tell you what, when you give, and you give from the heart, you create tremendous good karma. It's called karma yoga. It actually changes your karma. It might even take away things like potential illnesses that are there for you in the future. It might take away bad luck and things like that. It will create good energy. By giving, we receive, and it's incredible. It's a simple message, really, but it does work, and that's the way to change the world. But we are now at the end of the show.
And we've got to change our karma and go home, Greg.
Matt is going to be out there with his finger hovering over the close button on the new machinery that we sussed out how to use. But we're going to say goodbye to you all now, folks, and thanks again. Don't forget to become a patron and the rest. We'll see you soon. Bye for now.
Ciao. Good night.
Good night.